If you have a card, right there's the city secretary, she'll take your card.
Oh, yeah. Can I have my cheeks turned?
How are you?
Yep.
Play theater.
Hey, keep that one turned off.
People never.
Smart, you got a cookie, huh?
No, I was just teasing.
I love planning ahead. I love laughing.
Always thinking.
That's right.
Always thinking.
Always thinking that's fun.
I bet in 5 minutes, there's not. I can't.
Do you have a question?
First step.
I lost it.
Oh,
Oh my God. Well, I need to.
Them and then
oh, maybe.
Is it cinnamon?
Is it just all the sugar and all the?
Oh, what are you trying to say? Is it overdose?
I mean, it happens to me too, so it's not a judgment.
Yeah, well, I don't work out like you do, so, okay.
Some days I can get away with it, not every day.
My wife has never exercised a day in her life. Genetics.
Genetics, I know.
Genetics. Although she does
Yeah.
an awful lot of laundry. I watch her running around the house.
You all have something. Really?
I don't actually believe in
Hey, also, if you find something out, let me know because.
Never judges.
Because we,
I hate these.
Okay.
Everything you do. I bought one of those
I'm sorry,
things with my.
say that again, because I'm gonna judge you now. They're not two.
Mom, I think she honestly, it's crazy. It's why they love doing laundry. They're like, let them do it.
Wouldn't that be?
Oh.
Wish you could do it.
You know what I'm saying? Like what people do.
Too late.
I'm like, a duck above water and there's lots of stuff going on in the house. Make things run smoothly. What? Like when you turn on your hot, like when you load stuff up, I'm with you.
Oh, you guys are watching yours.
Too. I just.
Okay.
My precinct.
Okay, we're all sitting down, so I think we'll go ahead and start. The regular city council meeting of Colleyville will now come to order for March the 3rd, 2020 at 7:30. We're now in session. Let me call the roll. Councilmember Nakamura.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood.
Here.
Councilmember Wheat.
Here.
The mayor is here. Councilmember Dodson.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Rigney.
Here.
So we will open with an invocation given by Lyle Schofield of the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes.
Dearest Lord, we pray this evening for the blessings that we've received. We are so grateful to live in this wonderful city, this beautiful state, this glorious country. We are grateful unto Thee, Lord, for the protection we have, the success, the freedoms. We are grateful unto Thee for these great blessings. Lord, watch over us this evening. Allow us to discuss and communicate with peace and harmony, and help us to enjoy these freedoms that we have. We are grateful for this council, and we hope that we will improve this city and continue to find success and prosperity as we work together. Lord, these blessings we ask and say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Schofield, thank you so much for coming and offering the invocation for us. And I want to welcome everybody for being here. We have quite a few people here. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate the participation. Tonight, we'll have several public hearings on several items. And many people are turning in cards, I see, which I thank you for. But before I close any public hearing, I'll make sure I ask, has everyone spoken that wants to speak? And I don't want to miss anyone, whether you fill a card out or not. So one comment, Ben told me that somebody may be here for the item that on Hall Johnson Road has been, the applicant pulled that, so it's not on the agenda tonight. So if you're here to speak on an item that was on Hall Johnson Road, it is being resubmitted, the application is being resubmitted, so it's going to go back to planning and zoning agenda at their next meeting?
Just to clarify, it's not the cemetery project, it was.
Oh, yeah, it's, what was the address?
I think it was 2313.
2313 Hall Johnson Road. Yeah, it wasn't the cemetery. The cemetery's on here tonight. So tonight, we do have about 3 items that may take a good bit of discussion. So if it does, I apologize for that, but it's just the business that we have to do. So with that, I'm going to move. We just came out of executive session. So agenda item 2, I'm moving to that right now. Agenda item 2 is there for the purpose, if we need to take any action coming out of executive session, because we can't vote in executive session, we have to take all action in the public. We have nothing tonight to vote on, no action that needs to be taken. And so we'll move to agenda item number 3, which is announcements, proclamations, and presentations. We have no proclamations or presentation tonight, but we do have some announcements. And I'll start off. I just wanted to recognize our fire department again, our emergency response people, especially Shane Baylor, William Hutton, Brenton Wilson, and Brian Wallace. And the reason, on February the 13th, they had their 12th save in the last 2 years. I mean, that's saving someone's life. That is just phenomenal how many we have in this town. There was a patient that was actually unresponsive and not breathing in cardiac arrest, and so they applied their life-saving measures and CPR and electric shock and drug therapy and all the things that they can do. And the patient responded, and is going to be, it's in stable condition and expected to completely recover. And so I'd like to brag on them. They are so good and very well trained and very responsive and get there quick. And we're very fortunate in this community that we live in the safest community, and part of that reason is because we have committed emergency response people like these fellows. So we really thank them for what they do. So
I just want to say something, that Colleyville continues to win again. This is probably what, our 5th or 6th award in this last year?
Yes.
But I wanted to tell you, I'm going to read this. This is kind of long. Well, it is a little bit. But the Texas Comptroller Glenn Hagar announced the City of Colleyville is the latest local government entity to achieve specific transparency goals through the Comptroller's Transparency Star program. Colleyville received a star in the area of traditional finances, which recognizes entities for their outstanding efforts in making their spending and revenue information available. Transparency Stars recognize local governments, entities that provide an easy online access to important financial data. By providing meaningful financial data in addition to visual tools and analysis of its revenues and expenditures, Colleyville has shown true commitment to the Texas taxpayers. I'm proud of that, aren't you? This whole group, absolutely. This effort achieves the goals set by my office Transparency Stars program, Hager said. I'm pleased to award Colleyville a star for its accomplishments. The Comptroller's Office launched the Transparency Star program in March of 2016 to recognize cities, counties, and school districts making important strides to greater government transparency. Local government entities can apply for stars in the areas of traditional finances, contracts, procurements, economic development, public pensions, and debt obligations. After receiving an initial star for traditional finances, remaining stars may be awarded in any order. We will now pursue additional stars in other categories, and I know the team that we have, we're a likely candidate to take quite a few of those stars home.
Yeah, we have a great staff. They do a great job. And if
Absolutely.
anyone heard of the State of the City, I think I rattled off like 8 awards this city won this year, which is quite phenomenal. 4 of them state-level awards, and actually won a national-level award, so.
Yeah, and I want to tip the hat to our staff.
Yeah.
Our staff, you guys are amazing. That, and our finance committee that we sit on, and to really dive in and be able to be cash fluid like we are, and have working to pay off our debt, which will be debt-free before too much longer. All our projects are paid in cash, and Colleyville's blessed. So you live in a blessed town, and we're proud to represent that for you guys. Thank you.
Yes, we are. And on that note, we have a great, on February 21st, we had the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra at Colleyville Heritage High School, and it was a full house. And our staff put that together along with City Council, and it was the first ever that we welcomed the arts to the community. And I'm going to just give a shout out to a few people who made this possible, because again, we have the best, I think we've got the best staff in the state of Texas. But anybody who would like to differ with me, come on, let's have a discussion. But some of the people that I would like to shout out to is James Beard and Dion Duman, Public Works. They worked very hard to put that together. Leslie Hill, Colleyville Center. Christine Johnson, sitting down there at the very end. And Adam Steele from the City Manager's Office. What'd you say, Bobby?
Christine Lovett.
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine, we're on
And
Christine.
Christine Lund.
Right.
Both
Well, Christine
Christines.
works very hard, but Christine Johnson's not here tonight, but don't tell her I said that. Jamie Maynard, Community Development, and Sheila Seva, Finance Department. And so we are looking forward to hopefully this being an annual event.
Yes.
Awesome.
So in the vein of other programs that have won us a few awards, I'm sure most of you all are aware of the Colleyville Receipt Race. The City of Colleyville and GCISD has partnered for the 3rd annual receipt race to support Colleyville businesses. Shop anywhere in Colleyville March 1st through April 30th and turn your receipts into your school's PTA, same as you do for box tops. It's that easy. Receipts are due to the Colleyville City Hall by May 4th. The school that collects the most receipts, regardless of value, will receive a donation to the school's PTA. First prize is $5,000, second prize is $3,000, and third prize is $2,000. All participating schools will receive a $500 donation. For more information, visit colleyville.com or call 817-503-1111.
And this is a great partnership with our school system, and we did it last year. And this is one of the creative ideas that we got an award for, actually. We did several quarterly incentive programs to help our businesses during a Highway 26 construction. As you know, it's been going on for nearly 3 years.
Ever.
Forever, yeah, seems like forever. However, because of the incentive, this is just one of the incentive programs. Actually, during the whole time of construction, sales tax in the city has never gone down. It's always gone up. And in fact, it's always been over what we had budgeted each year. So that's really quite phenomenal. We have a great city, we have great businesses, and so great staff that comes up with these great ideas.
Is it me? I'm ready. At the Chambers City Slickers event is coming up. City Slickers is a fun evening full of live music, Texas barbecue buffet, dancing, armadillo races, silent auction, and casino games with friends. Tickets are available now. The event will be held Friday, March 20th from 5:30 to 11 p.m. at Austin Ranch, 2009 Anderson Gibson Road.
So I've got some big news. Colleyville Clean Sweep is coming back March 14th, and I think of this as a great opportunity to use my kids to clean out the house during spring break and take everything to get dumped on March 14th. So it's our annual cleanup event, Clean Sweep. It returns March 14th. It offers all of our residents a one-stop drop-off event with 5 different stations. The Crud Cruiser is for household hazardous waste, electronics recycling, document shredding, bulk brush and trash, and tire recycling. It's from 9 to 11. It's free for all Colleyville residents with proof of residency. Just bring your driver's license or a utility bill. And it's in the Colleyville Heritage High School parking lot. So we hope to see you there.
My wife loves this because of that paper shredder.
It's
and
wonderful.
have Boxes of paper to get rid of. And
Yes.
Yeah, that's the most important for me to, I'm going to announce the sign enforcement being renewed along State Highway 26. During the construction of Highway 26, we allowed businesses to add special banners or small signs that would direct customers to their businesses because some of the entrances were closed. There are all kinds of activities that made it difficult to get to the businesses. But as of March 1st, the enforcement of illegal signs and banners will be enforced. This enforcement code enforcement has already notified businesses of the return of the sign enforcement, and we appreciate the cooperation of all businesses to go back to our standard set of signs and those that have been approved by the city. So thank you very much for that.
thank you, guys. I think that's all the announcements. So we will now move to agenda item 4. This is the consent resolution. So this reading and public hearing of Resolution R-20-4477, a resolution approving city council action under consent items at the regular city council meeting of March 3rd, 2020. Whereas city council has taken action on certain items on the agenda under consent items, now therefore be it resolved by the city council of the city of Colleyville, Texas, Section 1, that the agenda decisions approved by city council action under consent items as follows are hereby adopted. A, approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting of February 18th, 2020. B, authorizing the submission of a Department of Justice federal grant application and committing resources if city is a grant recipient. C, approval of a license agreement with Dallas Area Rapid Transit for the installation of a 144-count fiber optic cable encased inside a 4-inch steel casing pipe crossing near Branford Road and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement. D, approval of a professional services agreement with Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc. for the 2020 water, wastewater, and roadway impact fee update in an amount not to exceed $127,600 and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement, and it is so resolved. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Michael Miller, the Chief of Police here in Colleyville. We are before you this evening to request permission to submit a Department of Justice federal grant application that would fund school resource officers in all elementary schools in the city of Colleyville. It's our understanding from the position statement regarding school security that the council released several months ago that the council supports a policy of having full-time SROs in every school in the city. The timing of this grant, which closes March 11th, requires us to seek permission before the FY21 budget discussions officially kick off later this month, and we didn't want to miss out on the grant opportunity. We've already had some discussions with the city manager's office and with finance on funding these positions in the next year's budget, and we'll continue to work with them throughout the spring and summer as we formalize our budget requests. This DOJ COPS grant will cover up to 75% of the approved entry-level salary and fringe benefits of each newly hired full-time sworn career law enforcement officer over the 3-year or 36-month grant period. It does require a minimum of 25% local cash match requirement and a maximum Federal share of $125,000 is allocated per officer position. There's also a 12-month retention requirement for each officer position funded by the grant at the conclusion of the 36 months. We are asking for permission to apply for this grant and intend to ask for 5 SRO positions, which are every elementary school in the city of Colleyville. With that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Very good. If we were successful in the grant, when are those awarded?
So the grant is typically awarded in May
Okay.
with funds available in June.
June, okay, super. Any other question for the chief?
And it was for what, 3 years, Chief? Was it?
It's a 3-year, it's a 3-year grant period, unless we hit that $125,000 maximum per individual, which we will, based on our financials, we'll hit that around year 2. So the grant would essentially be worth about $625,000.
Well, Well, I want to thank you very much for doing that, and along with our city manager, that since he's been here, we've reached out for so many different grants. And this is just another example of using the resources that are out there, and sure appreciate it, because I know it's a major concern for everyone, the schools, and we appreciate you doing that.
You're welcome.
Any other question for the chief?
Yeah, I understand y'all met with the area police departments and GCISD. Are they working in conjunction with us on this?
So the grant requirements, DOJ doesn't allow us to work together to do a joint grant application. So we do have to apply for the grants as our own city. I'm not sure exactly. It's my understanding that the other cities are not seeking that grant, but again, that's their business. I'm not sure.
Very good, thank you, chief.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Mayor, just
Yes.
a quick comment. One of the reasons we did this is that we want to be prepared for the possibility of implementing this program. And there's a lot of discussion to be had as part of our budget, but if we miss this opportunity, there was a risk that the grant funding would not be available next year or the following year. And so we figured it was in the best interest of the community to apply now and then to work throughout our budget process, which we had planned on doing anyway. And as part of that effort, we do plan on reaching out to the school district and the other communities to talk about this. Their initial response at our meeting was that this was something that they had not planned for and that they did not anticipate funding at this time. But that doesn't mean the discussion won't continue, because we do believe this is the future. And so to the extent we can be ahead of it, we'd like to do so.
Yeah, the funding stream was not offered last year. It is offered this year. There's no guarantee. I think it's about $400 million that DOJ is going to provide for officers under this particular program.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for
Very good,
taking
thank you.
those,
Thanks, Chief.
those chances and taking all the opportunities
Yes, sir.
to protect the kids.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Rachel Reyes, Director of Public Works. I'll be speaking on the next 2 items. Item 4C is staff is seeking approval of a license agreement with Dallas Area Rapid Transit, also known as DART, for the installation of a fiber optic cable crossing near Bransford Road. The city entered into an interlocal agreement with the city of Grapevine on April 17, 2018 via resolution for the installation of this fiber optic cable. The city is expanding the fiber network and intends to install the conduits under the railroad tracks near the Bransford Road crossing. This license agreement with DART is for the purpose of constructing, installing, maintaining, and operating that fiber cable. So the cost of the DART license agreement is $1,450 per year. Staff recommends approval. Any questions on
I
that
have a
one?
question. Right. What are we paying for there? Just the fact that it's laying there and we have to pay for, so it's basically taxing this, or what?
Yes, basically, we have to pay for a crossing underneath their right-of-way.
Right, but we're not paying for anything that's added, it's just so we're paying for it to be in their property?
It's just the use
Gotcha,
to be inside
okay.
their property, correct.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
We pay similar license agreements for water main crossings and sewer lines
I
and
know,
other things.
but it's,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Go on to 4D. On this one, staff is seeking approval of a professional service agreement with Kimley Horn Associates to update related water, wastewater, and roadway impact fees analysis and related fee collection schedules. Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code provides a statutory authority for municipalities to collect water, wastewater, and roadway impact fees to pay for the expansion of major public facilities due to additional demands on these systems generated by new development. Colleyville first began collecting roadway and water impact fees in 1990 and added wastewater impact fees in 1995. Texas law requires communities which collect impact fees to periodically update the related water, wastewater, and impact fee, and to recalculate the applicable fee schedules. This update process is required to take place every 5 years. Kimley Horn and Associates has been in charge of preparing these fees for the last couple sessions that came up, and staff is recommending Kimley Horn and Associates be retained to perform the analysis associated with the updates due to their experience and familiarity with the city. Staff recommends approval.
Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
How did you?
What all goes into the analysis? Does it include the age of the facilities and so forth, or?
Well, it depends on the available land use and what would create to expand or to allow, to accommodate for more expansion.
To go, okay.
So it just depends on what's coming and what's zoned out there and what potentially is open land based on our land use plan.
Okay.
So they're basically doing this just to make sure we're charging enough to cover, is that
Well, yes,
correct?
every 5 years, we have to make sure that this money is being utilized in the right way, being allocated to the projects that are supposed to accommodate the growth. And if not, then we have to rearrange those projects and see which ones will accommodate that growth.
And just another comment, one of the reasons why you do these professional service agreements is to defend your impact fees, because more often than not, the accusation is that they're too high. On our end, we want to make sure that they're adequate and that they're appropriate, but on the other side, we want to be able to defend them as well.
Correct, and that you're using them for appropriate projects as well.
So do we ever lower them?
I mean, it just depends on the availability, and these are only charged to new lots and
Right.
and stuff like that, so,
Something new coming in,
Yep.
right?
exactly.
I've never seen, other than when property values dropped in the, 2008, 2009, I've never seen impact fees go down.
Yeah, I don't think these will go down this year either.
I'm pretty sure they
They
won't.
were lowered in the 90s. There was a
Okay,
challenge
all right, so
mounted
they
by
do.
the development community, and they were lowered.
Right, and again, these are only for new lots and new developments, not for
Yeah.
existing.
It's just, to me, it's interesting to pay that amount of money, $127,000 to figure out. But I understand that we need to make sure that the justification of them.
Yeah, you do have to have a solid basis.
Yes, okay. But it's just, thank you,
Very
Ray.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, there's no more questions. I'm going to open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Have any cards? I have no cards. Anyone wish to speak on any of those items that have been discussed so far? I see no one indicating that, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. The motion is in order.
I make a motion to approve Resolution R-18-4252.
I'll second.
Have a motion to approve by Councilmember Nakamura, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood. Would you open the vote, please?
She's, excuse me, I think she said 18, R18, it's R20.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Four-
It's,
R20-4477.
yeah, 4477. I was looking at the old one.
Okay.
R-20-4477.
I'll still second.
Got it. You may show the vote when it's ready. That motion's approved, therefore the resolution is approved. We're going to move, the next item is we're moving into agenda item 5, and we have 3 items, 5A, 5B, and 5C. 5A and 5B are both related to the Bluebonnet Cemetery. One's for zoning and one's for special use permit. And because these are so closely coupled, the discussion, the presentation, the discussion is going to include both of those simultaneously. So I'm going to go ahead and read. So we're going to deal with 5A and 5B at the same time. So I'm going to need to read the caption for each ordinance. So 5A, first reading and public hearing of ordinance O-20-2111, consideration of a zoning change request from the agricultural district to the CC1 Village Retail District on track 2B and 2B02, abstract 180 in the JL Bias Survey located at 5713 Colleyville Boulevard, case ZC 20-001. And Agenda item 5B is first reading and public hearing of ordinance O-20-2112, consideration of a request for a special use permit for cemeteries or mausoleums on track 2B and 2B02 abstract 180 in the J.L. Bias survey located at 5713 Colleyville Boulevard, case ZC 20-002. Ben?
Thank you. Ben Briner, Director of Community Development. So this is a two-part process. For cemeteries and mausoleums, it does require a commercial zoning district. The CC1 district is that first district where they can then request the special use permit specifically for the cemetery use. And so this will apply to both of these cases, all the slides that I'll go through. So here's an aerial photo of the site. The cemetery has been there for several decades. This is the last area that they are wanting to extend into for burial sites. The current zoning is our agricultural district. As I stated, they do need a commercial district with a special use permit to authorize the use and this expansion. You can see the property adjacent to it to the west, which is also owned by them, does have the commercial zoning as well as a special use permit. That happened in 2012 when they expanded their mausoleum building, which is up along Colleyville Boulevard. The designation in our future land use map is institutional. And this is a pictometry photo, a different perspective of the site. So this one's more looking from west to east as you go from bottom to the top. Again, this is the last area that they are intending to utilize for the use as a cemetery. Then here's some other pictometry pictures to give you a different perspective. The left side is looking from south to north, and then the right side is looking from north to south, and that's as you go from top to bottom, or bottom to top. So this did previously go before the Planning and Zoning Commission back in 2018 in the late winter, early spring. There were some outstanding issues that they asked to be addressed. The applicant eventually withdrew the item in order to work with the subdivisions that are close by, the Broughton neighborhood directly to the east, as well as the Stonecrest neighborhood to the south across Hall Johnson. These are the outstanding issues. They now are ready to address their use, and they have provided mitigation in order to accommodate all of these issues as part of their request. Here's some other photos provided by the applicant, very similar to the ones we've seen already. So it is undeveloped at this time. They did begin work with a retaining wall along Hall Johnson. That's what initiated the inquiry from the city as far as their intentions for this part of the project or the property, and that's what started the request back in 2018. They have sodded the area. They have put in some silt fencing in order to deal with any potential runoff or sediment runoff, but they have been working over the last year and a half to address those issues. I provided these photos to identify at least some of the screening elements that are currently in place. These are taken from Google Street View, just at the end of the cul-de-sacs from the Broughton neighborhood. I'll go back to these pictures. You can see there is a substantial tree line along the entire boundary between the cemetery property and the neighborhood. This is the site plan exhibit that was provided by the applicant. So again, this is the last area in order for use as a cemetery. So again, the area of request and the undeveloped portion shaded in the gray. They have identified several issues that they are proposing as part of this. One is a new drainage channel along the entire eastern boundary, which will direct water to the south, and eventually it'll go into the retaining pond area that exists within the neighborhood, the Broughton neighborhood. Again, this is for burial sites, not for any other structures of any kind. So just your grave sites, so headstones
No, that's not,
primarily.
I don't think that's true.
Mausoleum.
They're putting up mausoleums.
Well, so There is a potential, that question was asked.
It's
gonna be-
already,
Already
one of
sitting
them's
there.
already built.
Okay, then, I think, definitely within this area, there
No,
is.
it's on the north side.
Right.
I visited that area.
So I assume the applicant will speak next, and we'll get
Yeah.
into some of these details.
Like I said, go ahead. I
Yeah.
just,
There is an area that's already developed within this agricultural boundary.
I was gonna say, that's the next slide.
Anyway, as part of this process, there is an 8-foot masonry, decorative masonry wall required along the entire boundary. This is required when you have a commercial use adjacent to a residential use or zoning district. The applicant is requesting for that line of trees to remain in lieu of the 8-foot decorative masonry wall.
Could you go back to those pictures you showed a while ago, where they showed the trees? Yeah, so, well, go back one.
This-
They're right here. So all the trees, are those on the subdivision property, or on the cemetery property?
So this one includes quite a few trees that are on the subdivision
Yeah.
side, but the tall ones there on the back of this
Yeah.
perspective, my understanding is they actually are on the cemetery property.
Yeah, so go to the next picture.
but those have been trimmed up to the point that they're not covering.
Low anymore.
Yeah, so
View.
the reason it caught my attention, yeah, that was one of our questions. Many of the trees in this picture, it looks like is definitely on the subdivision, and you can see the property line. There's smaller, there's a couple of big trees in there, but there's also a lot of smaller. It looked like most of the bigger trees is on the subdivision. Is that
Mhm.
true?
So my information from the applicant is that they are actually on the cemetery side of the property line.
May not be what you see on the.
Yeah, right here.
It may be further in there, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Are you talking about the house, the two houses that you're showing there, right in front of the house there?
Well, I'm just looking, unfortunately, I cannot point so y'all can see, but
Right, I know.
there's a big cluster of trees that's clearly off of the cemetery property. Now, if you get,
Correct.
you have to extend the line up at Hall Johnson straight down, and that's the property line.
Mhm.
And so there are some trees there,
Okay.
but it looks like there's more trees on the other side.
I don't
Anyway, I
have a
just wanted to
photo.
understand
Yeah,
that.
I didn't have time to add a photo. I had one of my staff members go out and take
Yeah.
a couple photos.
Okay.
From the cemetery side,
Mm.
there is the row of trees,
Yeah.
and then there are some fences, wood fences that I'm presuming
Yeah.
belong to the individual homes. But the row of trees are on the cemetery side of those fences.
Yeah.
Again, I think the applicant will be able to
Yeah, I
better
can ask the
indicate
applicant
where they
from this
are.
picture.
But they are requesting that the line of trees be in lieu of the 8-foot masonry wall.
Are they
Say that
proposing
one more
to add-
time, Ben?
Are they proposing to add to that line of trees or
Yes.
just maintain the current line of trees?
It'll maintain the current line of trees. They are proposing some additional landscaping, some
Okay. We'll get to
Nellie R. Stevenson, a different type as
But,
well.
Ben, let
Yes,
me
I will
ask,
get to that.
I apologize. So they're asking to put trees as opposed to the wall? Is that what you're saying?
Well, to
minute.
maintain, keep the trees that are existing instead of building the wall.
Well,
That's their request,
okay.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what you're saying there.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
They do have a plan for drainage. They are proposing a new drainage swale, concrete line drainage swale along the entire boundary.
By the way, I forgot, I was going to mention everybody, I think many of you are probably here to speak on this item, and so our custom is to hear the presentation from staff. Council ask as many questions as we can come up with so you can hear it, and then have the public hearing, so you've heard some of the thoughts that we've had, because I used to sit out there and I'd get very frustrated if the order was reversed, so you had the public hearing first, and then the council discussed it, many questions come up in your mind that you couldn't speak to again. So that's what we're doing, so we'll get to the public hearing.
So this is that exhibit identifying the channel. I suppose it's not the entire length of the eastern boundary, but it is almost the entire length. It'll direct it from the north to the south towards Hall Johnson, and it will make a turn in front of the Broughton neighborhood, just to the east, which eventually will then go into a system that takes it to their retention pond.
Could you back up one slide, please?
Yeah.
Who owns the trees in the channel that's along that property line? Is that's the actual property line over to the right, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
It actually.
Okay, because I'm looking at I'm using a pro system, and I'm looking at your silt fence I'm trying to see where that, whose property that is actually on. So that would be, the silt fence that's there now, is that on, that's on the cemetery side, correct? And the
That's
trees
right.
And the trees behind that, looks like it's 3 rows, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure it.
And
All right, thank you.
you can see that dark line is the structure, so you can see there's some, whatever, 5 or 7 feet on the east side of that structure line before you get to the property line, when you zoom in on the exhibit on the board right now. So I do agree that the bulk of the trees are on the private property, not the cemetery property.
Correct.
There are some root structures and things that certainly would be impacted by the ditch and/or a wall, but I don't believe by any means there'd be a clearing of all of them.
Well, that was my next question was, so if we're gonna cut a ditch in there, how many tree roots will be hurt? Because, you know, the canopies of the trees are the markers of the roots. And you go to trimming that out, that's a lot of trees down through there, that gorgeous trees that are through there that neighbors, I'm sure, don't want to lose. So I think that swell is actually, or that is a little.
Some of the tree roots are exposed in the ditch right now, but I do agree with you that, you know, the ditch moves a little bit west in the plan, and that may provide for some of the trees that are close to survive. But the trees that are east of that location, that are clearly on the private property, I would think most of those would survive.
Okay. Oh, I see on your,
Even if there was a
So-
wall, Jerry, or would it be just,
Well, the wall can't go east of the property line, and the wall needs to be, you know, the ditch needs to be back from the wall, so the wall would get closer, but unlike the ditch, which is, you know, fairly large and wide, the wall would be more of a trench. And so if you had trees that were impacted by it, you may have a few die off, but the tree depth is pretty thick, as the mayor mentioned, and so I don't think you'd lose all of them. And you could also require, on the back side of the wall, or even on the west side of the ditch, overstory trees that then would create a backdrop to supplement the wall. So if you had trees in front of the wall, and then trees in the back of the wall, that may create a nice depth perception as well.
Yeah. Ben, this is the drainage. The drainage, from what I've seen, it doesn't look like they're dealing with the drainage going to the north and the drainage further north that still comes off that property.
Yeah, so this, they were going to basically maintain the current state there. There's a kind of a natural break where some
It's
of it
been
goes
built,
north and
yeah.
some of it goes south, but there is a possibility for it to redo the grading to get it all to travel south.
Yeah,
The
it seems to me
grade
like,
there is fairly flat, and so they,
that's a lot of cut. I mean,
So-
really, truly, you're looking at 15 feet to start moving north water to south. So that's quite a bit of
I
cut.
have a proposition for you guys, since we're getting into detailed
Okay,
questions
go
and
ahead.
Ben hasn't finished. I don't know how much more you have to go.
a
Yeah,
few
go
more
ahead.
slides.
Huh?
I have a few more slides, yes.
okay.
Okay, but what my thought was, what I want to do, I think I'd like to go ahead and hear Ben,
And
what his presentation is, but I don't want Ben defending the applicant. The applicant
agree.
needs to get up here
Oh, I
and
know
tell us.
that.
I agree.
Okay,
I know that,
It's
sure.
actually 20 feet.
Okay,
Alright.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's
Okay.
okay.
This is just an exhibit to identify the trees as well as the new channels. They are intending to add additional trees, or plantings, I should say, along that eastern boundary. And so that all really affects the Broughton neighborhood. In relation to the Stonecrest neighborhood across Hall Johnson, they are proposing to install a 36-inch pipe fence, decorative fence, and then just behind that, a solid hedgerow of plantings as well. And that's what you see on the bottom picture there. And that will be right adjacent to the retaining wall that they built a couple years ago. And so as part of the conditions proposed for the special use permit, this is the list. And this was in an attempt to address those issues that were outstanding. So gravesite spoils are to be stored in the cemetery's maintenance area only. And what that would include is frequent removal of whatever storage they have there in order to keep replenishing with those spoils as they dig out new grave sites. They are proposing a setback of 25 feet, so no grave site or cemetery improvement shall be closer than the 25 feet to the eastern property line, with exception to the drainage and landscaping that they are proposing. So along that eastern boundary, they're proposing 25 Nellie R. Stevens holly shrubs within that area, and then 55 number 7 size Texas privet plantings. They will work with the adjacent property owners to find the best locations for that to add to the screening that exists today. And then number 5, the 3-foot ornamental iron or tubular fence along Hall Johnson with the 3-foot shrub row. And then number 7, drainage and swale channel improvements shall be made along the eastern property line and within the Broughton addition. And then as part of the review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, they did recommend a stipulation dealing with private mausoleums and crypts. And they recommended that they shall not be allowed within 100 feet of Hall Johnson Road. And that was there was some discussion in relation to the Stonecrest neighborhood and the visibility that they see as they pull out of their neighborhood. And then
Was there a
the addition of number 9.
Was there a specific reason they said 100 feet, or was that just a number they came up with?
So that's the approximate distance to the proposed internal drive that's closest to Hall Johnson, and so they use that number. And then number 9 is added in order to address the request to not build the 8-foot decorative masonry wall and maintain the existing tree line in lieu of the wall.
So that new condition is added by the applicant?
Right.
Go
We
back.
did send our notices out to everyone within 500 feet. I don't believe that there was any formal letters received back on this. Actually, let me look real quick. I don't think we received anything formal, but we did hear from several residents at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. But staff does recommend approval. This would allow for them to final the cemetery, the last part of the cemetery for their use. The Planning and Zoning Commission does also recommend approval with that added condition. With that, I can answer any questions.
Okay, let me just summarize what my understanding of the things that I've heard so far, because I expect next to hear from the applicant. But there's been, I guess going back, I don't remember, maybe a year or nearly, there was an agreement reached between the cemetery administration and the HOA. There was a private agreement between them. I've heard from citizens that are complaining about drainage issues, especially the ones adjacent to the cemetery property. I know that on the north side, could you go back to the picture of the layout?
Yes.
Where y'all were talking about a while ago, and Councilmember Dodson said, yeah, there's going to be mausoleums up there because there's already one. Now, back
The
again.
photos?
I wanted that show, yeah, up there at the north side, that shows all those little squares.
Cul-de-sac.
Pardon?
It's off that cul-de-sac.
Yeah, off the cul-de-sac. And I know we received an email from a couple that live up there, I believe, that have a drainage issue. And it's interesting to me that there's a restriction of 100 feet of mausoleums off Hall Johnson, but if there's going to be mausoleums right up against houses, that's a little different. So anyway, I'm just trying to outline the things that I are aware of in my head. I don't think there had been any discussion of the stone wall required by ordinance until recently, and the applicant is proposing not to do that. It's clear just in these presentation here, there has been a number of things built there. For instance, that cul-de-sac has been constructed, and some other structures have been constructed, both of which were done actually in violation of the two ordinances that were here because it was done before the zoning and before the SUP. So I just wanted to point out that that's a fact, and so we're dealing with that. We've already had some discussion about the buffering. That's a big item between the residents and the trees. And, I suspect that as we get into discussions on that and the questions I've heard, there's going to be a need for more detailed information about where those trees are and where the drainage ditch is proposed. Because I think, although we haven't heard it yet, I believe there's a proposal to actually put a concrete drainage swell in there. And so where that is relative to trees and damage to trees will become a question, but there's not enough information in the material I've seen to show us enough about tree location and that drainage ditch location to understand that yet. So I'm saying all this stuff just for the applicant's purpose, because you'll get up here and talk next, so that you're aware of some of the things in my head. And if there may be other things in.
Got a large number.
Okay, similar, okay. Are we ready to hear from the applicant? Okay, thank you, Ben. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Robert Reeves. I'm a zoning consultant
Okay.
representing Bluebonnet Hills. And I will speak and go through a presentation,
Okay.
a PowerPoint presentation. And you have a hard copy
Yeah.
of my presentation that will hopefully help you refer to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have one other speaker on behalf of Bluebonnet Hills, at least part of our team,
Okay.
Carrie Grossi, that would like to speak. And I hope I'm doing this okay. Let me make sure I'm going to the next slide. Bluebonnet Hills, the cemetery has been there at this location since 1953. Primarily started developing off of Colleyville Boulevard. This is a picture of the older part of the cemetery, because obviously the trees are more mature. And gradually started developing to the east, including the area that is being considered for zoning tonight. Unbeknownst to the cemetery until, I guess, about a couple of years ago, when they were further expanding that, it was brought to their attention that we needed to go through a zoning change. So we ceased developing grave sites in the part that wasn't zoned for cemetery use. And there was an application filed before the City Plan Commission about 2 years ago or so that was denied, frankly, by the City Plan Commission. So we went back, regrouped, and came back with a revised application. And the Plan Commission, and Mr. Briner indicated, the Plan Commission wanted us to address 7 areas. They called it issues. I just call it directives. And I won't go through each one of these because I will when I go through my presentation and tell you what we're doing on that. And we feel like we've addressed each one of those 7 areas, and so did the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they unanimously approved our request a couple of weeks ago. Over the past 18 months, we have been working with the Broughton Homeowners Association under the assumption that they would be providing information to their memberships and keeping them informed. I don't know how much of that happened, but I'll get to that point in just a minute. Area request is outlined in red. Mr. Briner went over that. I don't want to be redundant. The community outreach, we worked primarily with the Broughton Homeowners Association for 18 months. We worked with the Stonecrest Homeowners Association during that time. And we were working with the adjacent property owners through the Broughton Homeowners Association and the distribution of information that we were assuming that would be distributed. And the staff. We've had several meetings and conversations with the city engineer and Mr. Briner and his staff. So that's what's been going on for the past year and a half. The first directive was dealing with accumulation of sediment in the natural swell. I've got some diagrams of this. What you have is a property line, common property line. On our side is a natural swell, I guess, that's been there for years, maybe even decades.
Was that built when Broughton was constructed? Do you know?
I don't know, but
Okay.
perhaps the gentleman after me can address that.
Didn't
But,
s-
well, let me back up.
Okay.
It's my understanding, and I may get corrected on this. At one time, Bluebonnet Hills sold off where the Broughton subdivision
Right.
is.
Yeah, they
And
owned it, so,
Pardon?
go ahead. They
And
owned
in-
the
and
whole
in-
thing.
I'm sorry?
The Bluebonnet owned the entire area.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, they sold off where the Broughton subdivision is today.
We know.
And at the time, the developer slash engineer developer developed a drainage plan that was basically natural drainage, but it's my understanding included this natural swell that ran along the common property line between the cemetery and Broughton subdivision. I don't know when that swell.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that is you call it a natural swell, but I think that was a constructed
I
swell.
don't think so.
Yeah,
It sounds like it was. Yeah, it sounds like it was. It's just not, it's not concrete.
yeah.
It's natural. That's the only thing I meant. So, one of the problems today is the accumulation of sediment from drainage and runoff, particularly that occurred before we stabilized the soil and got rid of the spoils from the grave sites. So one of the things we have to do, and we've agreed to do, is clear out, I'm just going to call it a natural swell for lack of a
Yeah,
better
okay.
term, within 3 months of the passage of the ordinance, and still protect the trees. And if we happen to damage the trees, they'll be replaced, but we don't intend to damage the trees. Incidentally, we did a survey of where the trees, and I'm talking the pine trees here, the larger pine trees, of whose property line are they located on. I can't remember how many trees there are, but there's a bunch. All but 2 of them are on the cemetery's property. The trunk is on the cemetery's property. So obviously, it provides a wonderful natural buffer to the subdivision. It provides a nice edge to the cemetery. We want to protect that when we clear out this sediment out of the natural valley there. So we're committed to do that.
Could I
Yes,
ask
sir.
a question? So you were talking about cleaning out the sediment from the earthen swell, but is there a plan to build a concrete?
Yes,
swell?
I will
Okay,
get to that.
fine.
Yes.
You proceed on, I just.
Yeah,
wanted to-
okay.
yeah.
No problem. I got a slide of that.
Okay.
So a part of the first directive is clean the swell out along the eastern border. And to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, part of our proposal, we clean the natural swell out. It stays there. And frankly, it protects the trees. You know, we're not damaging the root system of the trees at all, the pine trees. And our proposal also considers building a concrete swell, a shallow concrete swell, that's on our property, obviously, that parallels the natural swell. So when the water drains down from our cemetery side, you know, it'll hit the concrete swell first and then go toward Hall Johnson
Yeah.
Road. So that's part of our deal with the association, for lack of a better term, is to build this natural swell. So there'll be 2 swells, sort of 2 line of, you know, catching the drainage, 2 swells parallel to each other. And somebody, I think you did, Councilman Dotson, brought it up. There are drainage issues, particularly on 1801 and 1805 Camden Green Road or Circle, whatever it's called, Circle probably. There's 2 property owners north of the cul-de-sac that we need to continue to work with, and I'll get to that in just a moment, that are experiencing drainage problems. Nobody's arguing that. So right now, the concept, among other things, is to regrade it just on the homeowner side of the cul-de-sac, regrade that hill so it drains toward the cul-de-sac, and there's an inlet pipe that will go into our new concrete swell, and we can talk more about that in a minute. It may be necessary to do a little regrading adjacent to the concrete swell closer to Hall Johnson Road. We don't know yet. We haven't done final engineering on that, and of course, we have to do final engineering, and it has to be approved by the city.
Yeah.
Nobody's debating that point. Okay. I guess you're looking at my handout, or maybe you have a monitor in front of you, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
we have a
monitor.
okay, good. You're looking at the same thing I'm
Yep.
looking at then. All right, this is a preliminary engineering drawing that our engineer prepared and submitted to the city for some initial feedback. Right at the top of the middle is a cross-section of our concrete swell. It's not very deep. It may be 1.5 feet deep and about 3 feet wide, 3 to 4 feet wide. That, if you look to the right of this slide, I've identified the property line where the trees are, and this concrete swell is in red. So, and as I said, it's just parallel to the property line, And then as it goes toward Hall Johnson Road, it will turn. Now, this is part of our agreement with Broughton Homeowners Association. When the original developer developed the subdivision, he had that natural swell going down the property line, and then there's an open basin that's there today, that the water would go into the open basement and then go in the inlet that feeds the retention pond that's there today for the homeowners association. So the idea is this concrete swell will sort of be the first line of drainage protection, will turn and go into that open basin that feeds the inlet into the retention pond, which is my next slide. The property line's on the left. It's that dash red line. The heavy red line is the channel. It turns to the right, goes over Broughton's property, and we have permission to build this on their property. And it terminates, as I said, as an inlet into the retention pond. Part of Broughton's concern, and I'd say a major concern that I'll address in a minute, is the silt that has developed over the years in the retention pond. And right now, it's my understanding, there's not enough water, just natural water going into the retention pond. So a lot of times, especially in the summer, they have to buy water from the water department or the city to add water to the retention pond. So the idea is to clean the retention pond out, which we'll talk about, but provide in the natural rain drainage situation, rainwater going in the retention pond through this natural swell, or natural concrete swell. Okay, Directive 2, better seal fencing or measure to control erosion. What we did, part of the problem over the last couple of years, and we saw that, I guess, about a year and a half ago, is, you saw it in the staff slide, there's just dirt, exposed dirt in this area. Plus, the cemetery would store the spoils from the grave sites, the dirt removed from the grave sites in this area. Number one, that is removed, the spoils are removed. That added to the silt buildup, the dirt runoff from the spoils. And they're stored in the maintenance area for a short period of time and then moved off site. So that reduces that problem. The other problem is we sodded the whole area. It's irrigated, we sodded, we stabilized the soil. And it certainly looks a lot more attractive than it did before we did that. Incidentally, while I got this slide up, and I'll hit it again in a minute, look to the right of my slide, just by the A. You see the line of pine trees. That is a good shot of the line of pine trees. And I'll talk about the wall in just a minute. But that follows, they're all on our property except for two. And that's just what we want to protect. If you look right at the top of the slide in the center, you can see the cul-de-sac, and there's a row of pine trees up there too, if you can see that, next to the two properties on the north. Directive 3, provide information on the planned detention pond on the cemetery property. At one time, there was a thought, I guess by the previous city engineer, there might be a need for a retention pond if we were coming out. We're adding a small road, 18-foot wide asphalt internal road to that blank site. Our engineer did an engineering study, ran the calculations, turned it into the former city engineer, and I forgot his name, he determined that, emailed us back, determined that, in essence, that detention pond's not necessary. There wasn't enough runoff to warrant a detention pond, so we handled that way. Directive 4, work with Broughton Neighborhood Association to clean out their retention pond. It took a little discussion, I have to admit, but what we're agreeing to do is contribute $32,000 plus $4,000 in cost overrun plus any taxes to dredge out the retention pond that's on the Broughton property. That's in our agreement. Incidentally, we have a written agreement between the association and ourselves. It's in your appendix, signed by all the board members, previous board members of the association. This is all documented, it's all executed, and we executed it. So we're agreeable to do that. Once this is approved, our SUP is approved, in our agreement, we got a certain amount of months to hire an engineer, and go through that process. That was a big deal to the association. Directive 5, provide a buffer area from the grave sites to the eastern and northern property lines. We are proposing a 25-foot buffer area where there can be no grave sites, above or below grade, no grave sites. Landscaping, this is how we're proposing this to work. The buffer, in the buffer area, we're proposing a minimum of Nellie Stevens, holly, bushes, which grow to about 15 feet high, and they're very dense, and they're evergreen. This is a minimum, and up to 55, or a minimum of 55, Nellie Stevens, well, not Nellie Stevens, Texas privet, which is a different kind of shrub. And the idea is, and this is not even debatable to us, is there are some open areas along the tree line that are exposed from the homeowners into the cemetery. And there was an area where there was some brush cleaned out, and you pointed that out, Mr.
They actually cut the brushes, the limbs off the trees.
Well,
It wasn't just brushes.
My understanding, and the speaker after me will address that because he was part of that process. It's my understanding we did that there are trees, but we did that in response to the adjacent property owner. But I'll let him address that. So here's how it works. Once we get everything cleaned out, based on your approval, put in the concrete swell, we wanted to meet with the property owners on the site and literally walk the line and mark where we can add new trees, new Nellie Stevens shrubs and privets. Literally, we do it on the site and mark it, put a stake in the ground, whatever it takes, and close those areas where there's some visibility penetration. Okay, this is just the same section that Mr. Briner showed you. It's conceptual. You can see the tree lines versus the tree versus the property line. And just conceptually, the lower drainage swell is the natural swell. The one that's next to that is the concrete swell. And the idea is that will be constructed outside the drip line of the pine trees, which is the extent of the root system also. Eliminate the spoils yard, I already addressed that, they're gone. They haven't been there in months. Directive 7, provide appropriate fencing landscaping along Hall Johnson. The chain link fence that's there today, the kind of hodgepodge fence, 1,500 feet along Hall Johnson will be replaced by ornamental iron or tubular fence that's 3 feet high. We will plant a 3-foot high solid hedge along the subdivision across the street from us, the Stonecrest Estate subdivision. In addition, we're going to agree to plant Bradford pears. This is in our agreement with the Stonecrest folks along the portion of the frontage that is across the street from their entrance. It's all in that dark gray area on the map that we showed you earlier. And we got in a discussion at P&Z about above-ground grave sites, and we agreed that we would not do with above-ground grave sites.
Yeah. Why did you pick Bradford pears?
That's just, we thought, they bloom. You see, I saw a lot of them as we were driving.
They're terrible trees.
I'm sorry?
He said there's several trees.
Terrible.
Terrible.
He said they're.
Yeah.
I'm not
Last
sure
about
we can
6 years
discuss
and they
that.
Okay. well,
Yeah, I'm sure we can discuss that. The idea is, that was a concern, visibility was a
Yeah.
continuing concern with those folks over there. We did the hedge. We thought the trees would provide a taller buffer. And this is just, you saw this earlier, Mr. Briner's thing. Now, the 8-foot masonry wall, and that was a surprise to us. And I'm just laying it out to you. We were not aware, we've been working on this for 18 months, and we were not aware that there was a requirement for a masonry wall between the residential area and our cemetery, an 8-foot masonry wall. But we were told that Friday.
Yep.
So, and then we've been trying to figure out what we need to do on that particular issue, because there's significant ramifications to us, and we believe the homeowners too. Again, this is a cemetery. I'm just supposing that, speculating that requirement in your code is to protect residential areas from really commercial areas. retail, commercial areas where you got trucks, delivery trucks, lights, those types of things. It makes all the sense in the world. We have a ton of open space, obviously, in our cemetery. We are asking you to waive that. I'll get to that in a minute. But there's several reasons that we're concerned about that. We were surprised with that. If we put the wall there next to the pine trees are gone. It'll cut through the roots. This is to stabilize, support the wall. We're probably going to have 2 foot deep, at least, footings along there. It'll kill the pine trees at all. If we build it on the cemetery side of the concrete swell, we got the trees, we got the natural swell, concrete swell. If we build it all along on the west side of the concrete swell on our property, it totally seals off the swell, the property line, taking care of the trees, maintaining what we just agreed to construct and clear out. And frankly, just the hydraulics of it, if you got a solid wall on that side, it totally reduces, the purpose of the concrete swell to drain into the retention pond. The water would just go along the bottom of the wall and somewhere go out on the street. So we are asking you, let me find the next slide. Whoops, okay, that's the tree line again. Actually, that's a little better slide. And I showed you that a minute ago. Incidentally, in the appendix are the agreement with Broughton. You have it. I don't have it on the slide. And the agreement with Stone folks. So we're asking you to approve our zoning. We know there's another public hearing coming up in a couple of weeks and waive the requirement for the masonry wall. We know, like I said, there's another public hearing coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll wrap this up. We did meet with the 2 homeowners on the north side of the cul-de-sac Sunday, along with several property owners along our common property line. And our goal is, we're asking you to approve this, but we know the final approval won't happen for 2 weeks. The goal is we want to go back and work with those. We need to finalize and do more of an engineering drawing of our drainage. We just talked about it conceptually, and we need to sit down. I don't know where the communication breakdown was, but sit down with all the property owners adjacent to us and go through the agreement that we have with the Broughton Homeowners Association. It was clear they were not familiar with that. In fact, I brought copies last Sunday and gave them out of the agreement. They didn't even have them. So we think we can do that in 2 weeks. We know this is not over for 2 weeks. It may not be over then. I don't know. It's your decision. But I appreciate your patience listening to me. I'd like to introduce Mr. Kerry Grossi, just to cover a couple of points. He is with the Blue Bonnet in the Cemetery Association.
Sure.
I'm just a consultant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
courtesy.
Good evening, Kerry Grossi, 1029 Greenville Avenue, Richardson, Texas. Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I think the way it was planned for me to assist in the presentation is when we were in the planning zoning meeting a couple weeks ago, a lot of technical questions came up regarding crypts and things of that nature that I was just able to answer a little bit differently. Obviously, this project has been going on for quite some time, since December of 2017, and I think it's fair to say, especially with some of the residents here, it's been a frustrating process. Obviously, somebody's home is their biggest asset. It's where they go every night. It's their sanctuary. And we operate a business right next to their homes that happens to be a cemetery that we're able to care for loved ones. One thing that we've learned in funerals and cemeteries, it's very, very, very difficult to meet everybody's needs because everybody has their own opinions and ideas on things. I will say is, since we've owned the property, Blue Bonnet, that I'm speaking of, is we've been very, very open. We've been very honest. We have made mistakes, but I think in the end, what we're trying to do as the operators of Blue Bonnet is do our best to be good neighbors. So yes, we did, and I've met personally some of the neighbors that were there. But what we did, yes, we have some agreements with the homeowners associations, which is obviously very important. But the direct neighbors to the property line is more important to be quite frank. So I'm not a civil engineer. That's why you see some civil engineering plans up there. So obviously, if I was getting water in my backyard, which I'm sure you're going to hear of, I walked in these backyards. Yes, there's water going there, and we need to take care of that. One of the issues that I'm concerned about is obviously we can't do anything, obviously, until this is approved. We can't do any swales, we can't do any fencing, we can't do anything, obviously, until this is done. And, well, we just want to do it right. And right now, we can't do that. We're committed, obviously, by the financial investment that we're going to make, but we've been committed to serving, my company's been committed to serving Bluebonnet, the residents of Colleyville, since December of 2013. So we're going to continue that commitment to them. The families that have already selected and chosen for Bluebonnet to be their final resting place, I'm sure many people in this room potentially have family members there or plan to be there. So it's our commitment to be the best to them, to the Broughton residents, to the Stonecrest residents, and my staff that happens to be there every day. So I'm happy to answer technical questions for you, and I hope that explained just a little bit of what our commitment is.
You'll probably get a lot of technical questions. I think
Yes,
we're
sir.
all trying to understand the details of this. If you could, so I want to start off, could you go back several slides and,
So, sorry,
yeah.
I need to go back to presentation.
Yeah, okay. And then scroll toward you. I'll just
Keep going.
hang out.
No.
Oh, right there.
Has to be-
In this, see that line where the soil surface is sloping down to the concrete swell and then the swell? There is, go forward a couple, I think the illustration I want may be there. Well, no.
Sorry.
missed it.
It's backwards. Go back.
I want to.
Do you
So
know
let
what
me,
page
let
it
me
says
ask,
on
let me just
yours,
ask
sir?
my question, then we'll find it.
Okay.
So in this picture right here, see the big flat area just to the left of the property line? There is an illustration in here somewhere, I've seen it, that shows the original property line, elevation, and then the new one, which is quite a lot higher. So my question is, what dirt work is yet to be
Okay.
done in that area we were just looking at?
No.
Did they show that picture you and I were looking at?
right
I
in
thought
the
they
packet.
did.
Is that in Mr.
Oh, maybe it
Reiner's
was,
packet?
yeah,
In
it's
the other
packet.
presentation.
Well, then, let me start here then. Go,
If you go one more,
can
there's
you find
actually
that one, Ben?
a grading plan. Right there.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there it is, up at top left. Everybody in the audience is hard to see, but that line is the current, I think, and then the upper line is where it's gonna be in the future. Is that true? Do you understand what I'm asking?
So I'm hoping I can say it. So when you say dirt work specifically, this is the area that we're speaking of right here. I'm circling, can you
Uh-huh.
see that under yours?
Yep.
There isn't any plans of doing any elevation changes or any dirt work in that specific area. That elevation, I believe, but I'm not the expert, meaning the civil engineer expert. Some of that height there is from the grave spoils from the years that went by, and we've since.
Okay, well, let me ask it different. So up in the upper left top,
Yes, sir.
that's cross-section VV or YY? I can't quite make it out. Can you show me where that cross-section is on the plan below?
Yeah.
That's really, will answer
That
my.
is all right here, sir. And then, so
Okay.
this is the higher point where I'm at, and then
Yeah.
it starts to go down here, and it goes down here.
But which,
It goes down towards the east, and then it goes down towards the south, going towards
Yeah.
Hall Johnson.
Okay, but
The
up
high
in the,
point is here.
I understand, but
Okay.
up in this illustration at the top left, can you just explain that illustration? There's two lines on that illustration, the flat, and then the slope, and then that one, and that's,
but the other one, down below that, what is that like?
yeah, what is that label? I can't read it, it's too small.
existing is currently like this. I'm not sure I can answer your question, Mr. Mayor, of
Oh.
this bottom one. I can't.
Yeah.
You want me to put it on the screen up there?
Finish grade,
Well, what is
top
it?
one.
It's existing grade and proposed finished grade.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, you may have to put it up there, because we're not getting there. The lower one is the existing grade, the city manager has it blown up on his computer.
Understood.
So he can show it on.
That could be prior to where, because I think they've already filled that area.
Yeah, that's where I'm going, I'm trying to figure that out.
But I thought that
Yeah.
it was stated that none of the spoils were put out there. I thought they were put in a storage or,
They were moved, they were put out there over time.
Yes.
And after this discussion, they moved them.
3 years ago, we've removed all of those. For 3 years now, it has not been
and put out there.
correct, ma'am.
Okay, because
Yes.
I know this gentleman here said they were put in
Yeah.
the gentleman next to you.
That
That
is where they were, and he is correct. This part, well, it's not on there anymore. The part that we're speaking of, the development, that used to hold the spoils.
Yeah.
3
Right.
years ago, we've eliminated all that.
And you moved them
We,
elsewhere.
it goes into our maintenance area, and then it's
That's
hauled
what
off.
I think he said. How many years
So
have,
here's-
have you
let
owned
me-
it? Blue Bot.
December 2013 is when we,
So 6 years,
yes, ma'am.
the current owners have owned Blue Bonnet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, back to the question. So, Jerry, show him what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the difference between the grade, you can see, the existing grade is at 643, I think, and the proposed grade is the 648.
Yeah.
So there's a substantial difference between the existing grade and the proposed grade.
Yeah, so my question was, if we're interpreting that correctly, that means the dirt's gonna rise, and it would appear that it would even be above an 8-foot wall.
And
That's
it
my
adds,
question.
adds to the slope also, significantly.
Yes.
You're right,
The slope to
But-
the
but-
It
property.
rises about 8 feet, which is equivalent to the wall at the property
Yeah,
line.
but I'm just, right now, just trying to establish
Understand.
an understanding of this.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not gonna, I can't speak intelligently on that. I
Okay.
can tell you, even when we were doing the development of that area, when we stopped, we didn't add dirt to that. The way it looks is the way it's been since I've been.
Yeah, so, but my question is, what's going to happen in the future?
Now, why is that gonna be up,
What-
increased?
Well,
is it
but
gonna
let him
be
answer,
raised?
let him answer. The question is, are you gonna, this picture.
Is
which
implying that we're
engineering
going to add.
Implying that you're gonna add dirt and raise it. So that's my question.
My knowledge on that is not going to happen.
Why is it in this picture that way?
I can't answer that,
Okay,
Mr.
so
Mayor.
that's
I
something we
apologize.
need to answer.
We
Correct.
need an answer
Okay.
to that.
Yep.
Okay. Now, on that same, Jerry, move over to the concrete swell. Yeah. All right, so this is the concrete swell you've been talking about.
Yes, sir.
It's really only 3 feet wide, and it shows to be on the western edge, 15 feet from the property line,
It's actually smaller.
which, and this isn't drawn to scale, I've figured that out.
Property line looks like, yeah.
And, well, I'm talking, the western edge is 15, right, Jerry? At the top, it says 15.
Yeah, I see it.
But if you look on the eastern side, the right side, that's only gonna be, 6 feet from the property line or so. So the scale, it's not the scale on this, so that's why I said earlier, we're really gonna try to understand where this is, where the trees are relative to the property line, because we're talking about whatever you do, if you clean the silt out of the swell, are you gonna impact roots? If you build this, are you gonna impact roots? I don't really understand that yet, because I don't have a perspective on location of trees and location of swell and location of this. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, Mr. Mayor.
And I don't think we're gonna get to the answer on that one until we all understand that better.
Okay.
I'm trying to point out things that we're gonna need a lot more information on.
Yes, sir.
And then we gotta figure out how to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's, and then you were talking about drainage on the north end. The houses are in Camden Court, I
Yes,
think.
sir.
Y'all said, yeah, there is a drainage problem. And I think recently you said, yeah, we need to do something about that. But we've talked about it, you've acknowledged that, but there's gotta be some work to figure out how that happens and what that design looks, I'm talking about the engineering design.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm really big on,
talking
this
about-
council probably isn't gonna wanna approve anything unless we really, really understand what will happen after that approval takes place. So typically, we ask for a lot of detail that explains that pretty rigorously, so there's no questions. You know, we don't want to approve things and have a lot of questions, and then something happened that the citizens are unhappy with
Yes,
because
sir.
it was not to expectations. The other one is up on that cul-de-sac that's already there on the north end. So there was, Councilman Dodson asked the question, hey, is there going to be mausoleums there? And I said, hey, Ben, don't answer that. You answer that. Is that
Yes, sir.
mausoleums up there?
There's one.
There is
Or what is
one, we call that a spec mausoleum. That was
Okay.
there when we, as you drive into
Yeah.
this area right here,
Mm-hmm,
it's approximately right here.
right.
It is not owned by anybody. The previous owner,
But my question is not, my question is, on this plan, it shows a bunch of rectangles. That implies they're gonna be, in the future, mausoleums.
that does not imply that. That implies those are build-to-suit lots. So it's not platted that way. This is a master plan. It's a conceptual drawing. So each one of these squares would be an area, whether a family wanted to put, however the square footage works, whether the families that purchased it wanted to put 2 grave spaces there, 12 grave spaces there, or
okay.
a mausoleum. a
Okay, so I
private
got to
mausoleum.
well, here's
Yes,
where I was
sir.
gonna go on it. So on the SUP, we could say, fine, they're not mausoleums, we can put a requirement SUP, no mausoleums there. Is that
In that particular area, yes,
would
sir.
that bother you?
No, sir, it would
Okay.
not. Somebody asked earlier that why did we come up with that 100-foot?
Right.
I think it was you,
Right,
ma'am.
yes.
So this road right here into that we were building this road. The reason why we came up from Hall Johnson to there, this area right here is approximately 100 foot. So that's why we came up with that number. It was just something that was discussed in the planning and zoning.
natural sort of line you're drawing there, so.
Correct, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Mayor, that right there would be, now, the thought process here is this particular mausoleum that's already on the property, if that's what you're saying, we would have to remove that. Nobody owns it. We call it a spec
spec, yeah.
mausoleum. It's something that somebody can look at. If they wanted to buy it, they could.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
Give you guys a
Got it.
chance for a minute.
I have a question. How close is that cul-de-sac to your property? The cul-de-sac that's,
To the
Been
north
built up.
properties here?
yeah,
Um,
the end of the cul-de-sac.
I would, from the east side, I'd, probably
Is there a 25?
45, 55, 40, 50 feet? From the end of this cul-de-sac to the east property line, sir? Is that what you're speaking?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'd put it at about 50 foot.
well, that shaded
Is there,
line,
is there a 25-foot distance? I don't think, well,
I'm guessing, I don't
but
have,
what do you, see that shaded line on the east property line?
This.
It's supposed to be 25 feet, so if you extrapolate that up,
looks like it doesn't,
yeah.
it doesn't work there.
I don't understand your question,
You-
sir, I'm sorry.
Those lots that are plotted here, right up against the northeast side of that area, the graying area down below is the 25 feet, I guess. If that's the case, then that 25 feet should extend there, and it should also extend on further north where those buildings and things are.
Mhm.
Are those buildings right on the property line?
No, there are no buildings here. What this drawing is that you're seeing, and it's a conceptual drawing
No,
of
no,
what,
I know there's no buildings there.
okay.
So my question is, will there be a 25-foot easement right there?
Well, we would have to, I mean, that's part of what was determined that we'd have to agree to. So however that 25-foot works from here, I mean, that would be the whole property line. We would be, this isn't platted or anything like that, so we would have to redesign our whole master plan. This, obviously, when this was done, and I don't know the specific time frame or year this was made, our company didn't make it. This wasn't part of the discussions when they developed this, so this would all have to be redesigned.
Okay.
Well, I have a question.
When
Go
I
ahead,
visit,
Bobby.
yeah, when I visited that area, that cul-de-sac, I was sure that I saw a large building right at the end of that cul-de-sac.
This is where the building is, right up
did.
here. as
No,
you
no,
en-
no, no.
Yes, sir.
That's the spec, George, that he was
excuse me.
talking about.
I'm talking, if you go further north. where-
Oh, the maintenance area?
Yes,
Okay. I misunderstood you, sir.
Is that maintenance area right on the property line?
Yes, that our maintenance, the main building is this square right here, and there's some storage. This small area is a storage, and then this is an enclosed warehouse right there, but they are right on the fence line there.
Why aren't there gonna be 25 feet there for those neighbors there?
You're talking about in the maintenance barn that's currently existing?
No, I'm saying, why, if there's gonna be a 25-foot area between your property and the residential area, why isn't there 25 feet all the way where there's residential areas?
I guess I'm not following you, sir. I apologize, and that's not,
It wasn't done
Why
that
did
way,
you
is
stop?
what it was.
What?
It wasn't done that way when it was built.
I understand that.
I know,
I'm just trying to find out why.
he's not understanding
If
your
you're willing
question.
to have 25 feet between your property and the resident, and the line of your property.
So are you suggesting that he take that building down?
And
or-
move it, is
or
what
is
I
that
think.
what you're
Or
saying?
whatever,
Yep,
yeah.
Okay, well, that was
Yeah,
there,
that's-
like I said,
well-
that
well,
was there
we-
before they ever start. when
I
they
would
sold
agree
the
with
property
that. We
on.
didn't, we're asking a 25-foot setback on Graves, started and expanded. That would be,
But it was still
Well,
not put there, it wasn't supposed to be put there. When it was
well,
put there.
when
Owned
that
all that
maintenance barrier
property
was
back here,
put there,
so-
I would assume Broughton wasn't built either. So that's
Of
a,
course it wasn't, yeah.
Oh, so it was there
It was-
before then,
Yeah, it was
It
there
was your
before the
property and you sold it, okay?
understood.
right.
So I'm just trying to look for why there are inconsistencies in what I see in the layout.
Okay,
Okay, I'd like,
Go ahead, Bobby.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Bob.
with your drainage swell that you have, let's go back over to the original line, just like where you were. I'm sorry.
oh, sorry, sir.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Instead of putting the 3 grave plots right there, could you not extend that swell out to catch that from that corner right there all the way down? Could you just eliminate those 3 spots?
This right here, you're saying, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's what the civil engineers are
all right.
engineers
Do
are
we-
working on now.
Okay, good. And that's the other thing. We don't really have a real true plat, it looks like. We
We
don't
need
really have a true grading plan. I mean, I know you got a conceptual on the
Yes,
other
sir.
one. But we're sitting here spending all this time on this, and we really don't have all the information that we need.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying before. We're gonna
It's just-
need, so let's talk for a second about, it. We gotta get to a point where we, one, all understand it, and two, make a decision on what we do. I think you fellows are gonna have to put together some detailed information that's to scale, especially along this eastern property line that designates, where the property line is, where trees are, where the swell is, where the concrete swell's gonna be, up in this area y'all were just talking about. This drawing doesn't even show the 25-foot extending all the way up north on the eastern property line. So it's not clear to me yet, did you plan to do that or not? So there's just it's difficult to sit up here and try to understand it with just words.
Yes, sir.
And so, I'm trying to give you as much information as possible. We're gonna need more. So you got some homework to do.
Understood.
As much as we can get to. And so, yeah, I agree with you. We've talked about this a long time already. We will not be able to, this is first reading anyway, no decision tonight. Really, it's gonna come down to, do we, and we still have to have a public
Yes,
hearing.
sir.
I think we probably have a lot of people to talk.
Yeah, let's-
And then after that, there may be more questions because we will learn things that people tell us and we'll try to get those answered. Because what we're sitting, I'm thinking out loud with you.
Yes, sir.
We're trying to determine how big of effort it's gonna be to get all the information we need to try to address fairly on both sides what should be done. And there's 2 weeks between now and the next meeting. So if it's deemed it's gonna take longer than that, we could table tonight. We could let it go to the next meeting. If we don't have it, table it then. So that's what I'm thinking right now, just to let you know that. So we can speak about that a little bit more in the future. Unless there's some specific
no.
question we hadn't touched on, I'm ready to go to the public hearing.
I'm in agreeance with you, Mayor, and here's
Yeah.
the reason why. This is my specialty, is in blueprints and stuff like this, and I don't see the information. There is no way that I can make a decision on this tonight or in 2 weeks, especially if they don't have all the information. And the tabling will actually help you guys. It'll give you time to breathe, get the right information, give it back to us, so we can actually put our hands on it and look at it. Should we find that we don't have all the information in 2 weeks, we can table it again and push it off another 2 weeks. That way you stay on the docket, and we can just keep moving that out as best we can to keep you guys and the citizens informed of what's going on in those 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Periods.
Yeah, because I'm very concerned. I'm not one that passes it and finds out what's in it afterwards. I want to make sure that exactly what is passed is what is done.
Yes, ma'am.
And I agree with Bobby 100%.
Okay.
So I don't want to do that.
And I don't want to table it right now. I want to hear what the citizens
Oh, I wanna
say.
hear-
Yeah, we wanna hear
So I don't want to make any motions for that. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so ready to go to the public hearing?
Yeah.
So we're going to go to the public hearing.
Absolutely.
So I'm
Thank
going to open, actually, this is interesting. I'm going to open two public hearings simultaneously. It's opening a public hearing on Agenda 5A, and I'm opening a public hearing on Agenda 5B. The reason for that, 5A is zoning, 5B is special use permit. We've been talking about all of it at one time anyway. So I have a number of cards. So there's several here that I have that do not wish to speak. So let me just tell you about those. Kathy Wade does not wish to speak but opposes. Clarence Moyse does not wish to speak but opposes. Beth Utery does not wish to speak but opposes. Stephanie Butler, Stonecrest HOA president, does not wish to speak but supports. Okay, so those are the ones that wanted to state their opinion but didn't want to speak. Now let me go through the ones that want to speak. Mindy Russell.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Mindy Russell. I live at 1805 Camden Green in the Broughton subdivision. My husband and I sent each of you an email over the weekend, but I am here in person to verbalize some concerns over the proposed plans as they currently stand in relation to my property. I have already provided background information on the situation that brings us all together tonight. Understanding that, I would like to highlight the main concerns that I and other neighbors have related to the proposed plan. On paper, this looks like a nice flat area. Let me show you. How does?
Put it on that white
On the
piece
white,
to your
yeah.
right.
On that,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Perfect.
So on paper, that looks all nice and flat. Let me show you what it really looks like. Oh, can you hear me standing from this point?
You just talk loud.
My home is actually, when you see right there, I'm right here, right behind that cul-de-sac. So standing from my backyard, that's my fence, and you can see the white is the road. This is looking down my back fence line where it connects with the eastern side. You can see that terrain is really raised.
Yeah.
This is looking from the cemetery side into my backyard, which is nearly eye level with the top of my 6-foot-high fence. And this right here is also looking down the eastern side, and you can see where the height of that hill is at, where the road is constructed over there. So like I said, on paper, this looks like a nice flat area. When we moved here 12 and a half years ago, this land was at best 2.5 feet to 3 feet high. Fast forward to these pictures and where we are today, the topography of the land has changed drastically. The land is much more elevated in height, almost eye level with my back fence, and that road that you see has been constructed. The drainage issues that are addressed in the proposed plans in no way address the severe drainage problems occurring along my house and those of my neighbors along Camden Green. As you can see from these pictures, we get a lot of water runoff off of this slope to the lowest part of the fence, as do my neighbors next door. To help alleviate some of the problems, my husband and I invested in a rather significant draining system, which included a sump pump that must run nearly nonstop during any moderate rain in order to keep our backyard from being a complete river from this runoff. We feel that before a zoning change is approved and this area of the cemetery is further developed, the drainage issues need to be addressed with a detailed plan, engineering reviews, discussion with us, the homeowners, and verbiage of how the plan will be executed. It doesn't seem right to approve D, E, and F if A, B, C hasn't been fixed first. While I would like to take Mr. Reeves' word, now that he is aware of this problem, that this drainage will be fixed, I unfortunately have been burned in the past by contractors and their word. It is nothing personal towards Mr. Reeves, but I feel it is imperative to have something concrete in writing that satisfies all parties, specifically the HOA board members, other affected neighbors, and the cemetery. Secondly, I am concerned with the screening. As you can see, let me point out, there was that nice big picture of the full pine trees. This is what the pine trees now look like. They've all been cut up. So we are concerned with, as you can see, the branches of the pine trees have all been trimmed up. While the garbage and the underbrush needed to be cleaned out, it is really unfortunate that whomever the cemetery hired to clean the underbrush raised all the branches, all along the eastern side, as well as along the north side of my fence. This took away much of the screening that was previously there. We feel that this area needs additional screening and that it needs to be well thought out. It does no good to randomly put hollies in the ground on a terrain that is sloped if those hollies at maturity are potentially going to block out the sunlight from the established pines and end up creating dead pine branches. Another concern is if we're irrigating these hollies, is that going to contribute more to the drainage problem that we already have?
I'd like to hear
Go
the
ahead.
Do you want me?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Another possibility is raising our fence to an 8-foot fence. I don't know the best solution, but I do believe that this is an area that requires more attention and discussion. Our fourth concern, and it's been addressed a little bit tonight, is the location of the mausoleums or the above-ground grave sites. The Stonecrest neighborhood was given a 100-foot setback from Hall Johnson. That includes a road. I would like for that same standard to be applied to all of the Broughton neighbors. This is actually less distance than the Stonecrest neighborhood, being as they have an entire street between them and the cemetery. With the change in ground elevation behind us and a 6-foot height allowance given, I would really prefer not to have a mausoleum towering above us in our backyard. I have asked several times now the same question, and I appreciate it being a little bit more addressed tonight, but I've asked the question repeatedly, where are the mausoleums going? And the answer I get is, we don't know. There are no plans for this specific area right now, referring to those little blocks. I find it hard to believe, given that there is a masonry entry and a road already constructed, and then the one mausoleum there, that this is not the location. But again, that was a little bit more clear that it is where somebody could choose to have that. So we would like to ask that the mausoleums be located, give us the same standard that is being given to the Stonecrest, and I'm sure that there's a lovely location within the cemetery further in where these could be built. I know without a doubt that a lot of time, effort, and work has gone into the plans that were presented to you. I do not discount that at all. I also recognize that serving on an HOA board is a voluntary position that requires a lot of work. I also appreciate Mr. Reeves for reaching out and wanting to schedule a meeting with us, the homeowners, this past Sunday. It was a good turnout, but when you have homeowners who have A, never laid eyes on the agreement, B, unanimously asked that this process be tabled, as obviously there was a breakdown somewhere, and C, can admit that an entire section of the fence line was left out until I brought it to their attention, I do believe the right thing to do is to momentarily press pause. Reevaluate, incorporate the opinions and input of the homeowners, and work together on best solutions. As I told Mr. Reeves on Sunday when he said to me, so what I'm understanding from you all is that you're not saying, oh, heck no, go away. He is correct. We are not saying that at all. What we are saying is let's table this, reevaluate, and let's make sure to get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Cheatham.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Jonathan Cheatham. I am the president-elect of Stonecrest HOA. My house is in that Stonecrest subdivision right across from Hall Johnson. And I am here at least to speak on behalf of Stonecrest to say that we are in approval of the current plan as submitted tonight, as it has addressed each and every one of the specific contentions that we had brought up previously. Obviously, based on Ms. Russell's comments, our concerns are vastly different than those that are in the Broughton neighborhood, and for different reasons. The things that we negotiated with ours were done freely with an exchange of ideas regarding things like the fence height, fence materials, landscaping materials, and the 100-foot setback. And since those were each individually negotiated on behalf of Mr. Reeves and some of the board members and residents of Stonecrest Estates, I at least am here to speak in my capacity as president-elect that we approve of the plan as it was submitted by Mr. Reeves, because it has met the conditions that we have been negotiating for over the past several months. So I do want to thank everybody for their time this evening. I understand that the issue will be tabled, but I did want to express my support for the plan as submitted as it affects Stonecrest HOA. Thank you all.
Thank you. Michael Usery.
Good evening. My name is Michael Usery, and I live at 1800 Arrington Green. We immediately share a property line with the cemetery, and we are very concerned, as it seems like it's been expressed today at the board, with the city council, is the lack of specificity. We are very concerned about drainage. Myself, as well as several of my neighbors, have incurred a great deal of expense to improve the drainage of my particular property. As a matter of fact, just last year I put in a $6,000 drain to help with my drainage that's coming off of the cemetery. We do recognize that, there is a drainage problem. We met with the with the cemetery on Sunday, and they expressed, a good faith effort that they would address our issues. We suggested at that meeting that they table this, and they refused to do so. So, kind of a little dichotomy here, exactly what our motivations are, et cetera. I'll also point out that I do understand that the cemetery's been here since 1953. I'll also point out that this particular piece of property has been zoned agricultural also since 1953. So we're addressing our concerns here, and I do appreciate that. But I think that it was premature now, as you've mentioned, you pointed out, certainly, it is certainly premature to approve something. And I do also point out that Bluebonnet Hills is a part of a very major corporation, and I'm not sure I want to go with some kind of approval where they say, trust me, we'll work with your concerns later on, without having something in agreement, something written, for example.
Perfect.
Yeah, very good, thank you. Gary Cross, I think.
Yeah. Maybe less than Crossy or Grossy.
Gross. Okay,
Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, okay, so, Jim Taylor.
Good evening, council members. So I'm Jim Taylor. So I'm the president of the Broughton HOA. So I've been a member of Colleyville now for 2 years. So last year, as a homeowner, I got engaged on this initiative because I was concerned, as an association, were we making the right trade-offs as we were negotiating with Bluebonnet? So
Could you state your address, too?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1821 Grosvenor Green.
Thank you.
Yep. So I got involved as a homeowner, this is before my involvement on the board, just to say, hey, are we making the right trade-offs? And I could say that I support the agreement. We've been working closely with Bluebonnet on the agreement. There are 3 main areas on the agreement. 1 is on the sediment of the pond, 2 is on drainage, 3 is on landscaping. So I think we've reached agreement on those 3. However, everything was always subject to finalizing the engineering plans. And I think that's really kind of where we're at now, right? I mean, we have an agreement. It lays out our support of these 3 areas, subject to the finalization of the engineering plans, which we still have some more work to do, but we're in support of the overall agreement, subject to those engineering plans meeting our homeowner needs, particularly on the east side as well as on the north side of our HOA. So.
Okay. Very good. A question about the silting was one of the issues. That pond is, it rarely has water, is that right?
What was your question? Rarely,
Huh?
it has water. No,
does,
it's
okay,
water.
never
No,
mind.
it
I
has
was-
water.
okay.
Sometimes we have to cut over to city water in like
Yeah.
the August timeframe, but yeah, no, it,
Okay,
it's-
I was thinking about a different place.
Yep.
then. Thank you.
sure. Thank you.
Jules Moise? Sorry, I'm butchering names, I think. I apologize.
No, thanks. Jules Moise, 1805 Arrington Green. I think it was maybe appropriate that I follow Jim,
Yeah.
because the affected homeowners don't agree with the agreement that was reached. And I'm only been a homeowner for 3 months now, but I've been able to communicate with the affected homeowners, and a number of the things that he has addressed right now were not addressed with each of the affected homeowners. The drainage, the appearance, the wall. So yeah, I appreciate the idea that you are going to table it. It really does need to be tabled, because it does have to come back to the affected homeowners and let them be comfortable with the solution. Because at this point, and you have all of them here right now, no one is comfortable with it. It seems like the only person that's comfortable with it right now is the president of the HOA, and he doesn't live over there. So I think satisfying all of the affected homeowners is really the goal for us right now.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys listening to us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say, hey, I've been a head president of homeowners association, so I understand the difficulties of doing all this, believe me. We'll get there in the end. Dan Wade? Dan Wade, you may have left or something. Oh. Oh, we can't. Oh, okay. So, you want to speak later? Oh, okay, so you're in opposition, so if you don't, I'll just state that. Okay. Robert Renez, I think, man. Ah, okay, thank you. Ricky Tejada.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. Thank you for your time. I did not write on the piece of paper whether I supported or opposed, but I'm here to register my opposition.
Okay.
I based that upon several things. It starts with, there are several things in the plan that we don't have, but I appreciate the fact that you all are looking for detail. This is a major project. It impacts us. Interestingly, I just want to put it on the record that the Homeowners Association reached an agreement with the applicant and then called a meeting with us where we were under the impression that no meeting had occurred, no agreement had been reached. Just want that for the record. The wall issue, the 8-foot wall, was not addressed in P&Z, and because of the applicant's request to eliminate that wall, this is one of the reasons why that I want to oppose it right now. I think we need to give serious consideration to that. The reason being is I have two issues. I have a drainage issue. My property is, when you look at the diagram and you see Lot 3 and you see Arrington Green, I am directly next to the cemetery. For the last 3 years, the little natural swell, we call it, I'm not sure it's a natural swell, I think it was a part of the development, has completely filled in by my home to the point that the water that runs off of the property now, once that, it's probably maybe a 6-inch channel now. That water runs right across my front yard, and the tree in my front yard on the west side, the roots are already exposed because of the soil has been washed away. The other thing that I want to just mention, Mr. Reeves said that the trees on the cemetery property, that all but 2 of those trees belong to the cemetery. I'm not sure. I've not done a survey, but if that's the case, all of those trees that line my property, I'm actually watering those. So I'm paying for you all's water on that. So I'm not sure who owns those trees. I just know that I water them. The other thing that I want to say, and this is my greatest concern, is no privacy. When you talk about that area, and I appreciate you bringing up the elevation change, because if you stand on, it's basically 3 elevations. So you have where the natural swell is, you go up, I guess it's about a 5 foot, and it's a flat piece of property where I think they're gonna put the street in. In fact, we can just, we can look at this. This area right here, that's the street. Once you come to that area, you're already eye level at my master bedroom, master bath and closet on that side, and we've got windows for natural light to come in. When you stand at that street level, you're looking into my closet. So then when you go up to this area, right here, that is higher than the windows that are about 9, maybe 10 feet high. You're already looking down into my home. I don't know that, I believe that's unique to everyone because of the way the home was built originally, but anything that we can do to help me with privacy, then I want to do that. They also say, and I'm not sure about this area, this gray area right here, it looks like graves. And I see every weekend people coming to the existing things, and some people sit out there for hours. So I really want our privacy protected. I don't mind that people are going to come and they're going to grieve and they're going to reflect. I moved next to this place knowing that it's a cemetery there, so I'm not opposed to them doing what they do, but I just want to make sure that our privacy is maintained, and I really appreciate all that you all have done. And again, my final thought is as it relates to landscaping in the wall, these are things that we can do with great detail. We don't need to guess how many minimum trees we need. You can put together a plan to say, we've got this much space, these trees are gonna take up this much space, it's gonna take them this long to grow, and I don't wanna wait 7 or 8 years to have a private natural screen there. So I appreciate you all, and again, I appreciate the fact that as much as I love our HOA, we're dealing with a commercial zoning issue, and I appreciate the fact that you all take seriously your responsibility to represent us as citizens of this community. Thank you so much.
Quick question.
Yes.
You have a fence on your western property line, I
Yes,
assume.
sir, I do.
Is that fence on your property, on the property line?
It is, and I've been told that 6 inches to the west of that fence is still my property line.
Okay.
The pine trees are probably about a foot off of the line.
So there's no question on, I mean, the trees that you're talking about on your side are your trees?
No, they're on the opposite side of the
On the
fence, so
opposite side
I
of the
don't,
fence.
I don't know
Okay.
whether they're,
Okay.
I don't know whether they're the homeowners
Okay.
association trees or the cemetery. Now, I've seen some survey tapes out there, and if
Yeah.
those tapes are right, I think the trees are right on the property line,
Okay.
not my property line, though.
Okay.
The other thing that I just want to mention about those trees, the root system's already exposed in that swell.
Yeah.
I think that any construction that we do there, those trees are going to be lost.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Kathy Hadley? Okay.
Kathy Hadley, 204 Timberline Drive North, represent myself. I probably have been in Colleyville almost the longest out of all these people, and back in the 60s when my parents bought the land and then they bought the house and built a house and we moved out, of course, the cemetery was there. I have many family members and loved ones in that cemetery. I hate to see it changed. This subdivision wasn't even there. And why somebody decides to live by a place that there's a chance things could change. Well, it has, and there are those very responsible homeowners who have taken the changes under their belt, and they're taking care of it. I don't see how it's the cemetery's responsibility to build a wall. That's changing the cemetery. Just you build the wall. If you have problems, you take it upon yourself and you build the wall. You're affecting many others. The cemetery was there many, many years before the homeowner's residential place was there. I hate for it to be changed. And it sounds like the cemetery people are doing a good job trying to fix it, but I am completely against this wall and losing trees. This is Tree City, USA. Do whatever you've got to do to save those trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Terry?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I was not prepared to speak, but some things have come up. Number one, Mr. Taylor does not represent Broughton neighbors. He represents the board. The board never relayed the information that is in this agreement to us. We only learned about it very recently. Mr. Reed knew of the requirement for the 8-foot wall. He learned of it on Friday. We met with him on Sunday, and nothing was said to us that there was a requirement for a wall, and now they're wanting to negate that. I live at 1801. I'm right on the corner, okay? I'm getting it from three sides. I'm getting it from there, I'm getting it from the maintenance, and I'm getting it from that part of the cemetery. I'm getting it three ways. We have calls. I have a video. People don't think we're being affected by the water. I have a video if Miss Russell could bring it up and show it. Would you mind? I have a video of what happens when it rains in my front yard.
I'm not sure how we would show it.
Just probably have to show them.
On
Do you have a flash drive?
Do you have
She has
a
it
He has
on her phone.
pictures. He has pictures.
Oh, it's pictures or video?
It's a video
On your
she
phone?
has
Yeah,
a
you can put it
video.
there, it'll still capture it off the
Yeah,
camera.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had a flash drive, sorry.
We had just planted all new stuff, all new
1 second to
plants.
zoom in on it first before you run it.
There you go.
There you go.
Can you get in closer? Enlarge?
And make it larger.
Yeah,
Not,
tap it again, it sends it compressed.
No, you're getting,
There you go.
okay.
Still not
That
large.
is my front yard, and that is all water. All the landscaping is in the street. We called the funeral home, and some people did come out. This is about a year and a half ago, thought they'd get back with us. No. We put in a French drain. We did rocks to try to hold it. The backyard, we're not sure. It's a soggy mess because, like I said, I'm getting it three ways. The maintenance department, they have a fence. My trees back up to a fence. That fence in the maintenance department is inconsequential. Everything comes through. I'm in support of the wall because of what was said, that if the wall went in with a swell, that Broughton, namely 1801 and 1805, are not going to get washed away. Something needs to be done with my backyard. Like I said, I get it three ways. Mindy gets it basically the one way. But this needs to be tabled. As far as I'm concerned, leave it agricultural. Let's not do anything, except I'd like my yard back. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, that's all the cards I have. Does anyone else like to speak that hasn't spoken? I see no one indicating, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, public hearing is closed. No, thank you all for speaking, and thank you Bluebonnet people for being here. So we've heard a lot of issues, I think. Drainage, height, buffering, there's a lot to talk about. And as I said earlier, everybody has expressed that I think we're going to need some more detailed information and plan to really understand this a little bit better. Having to do with the trees in the wall and the swells and the ditches, it's a couple of forces acting against one another here. So I hear from a couple of people, some of the tree roots are already uncovered, which is bad for the trees. So you cut through roots, that's going to get them. So the challenge is how to come up with an approach here that saves the trees that can be saved and still makes the buffer. So that's going to take some thought, I think. And whether or not that can be done within 25 feet, I don't know yet. I mean, that's a question. That's kind of nearly a technical question to me. So anyway, there's work to do. We all agree with that. I guess to the council, the question is, this is first reading, do we let it ride to the next meeting? Do we go ahead and table now and table it to the next meeting, which we can pull it off the table and table it again if we want to? You got choices, you got preferences.
Can I ask a couple
Yes.
more questions?
Oh, absolutely, surely.
Okay. Can I ask you to come up, please? Yeah. I've been told, well, whichever one. I thought him. I've been told that there are crypts placed already in the ground in the areas, I think they're called in-ground.
Lawn crypts is what they're called.
What are they?
Lawn crypts, sir.
Yeah. Are they in this area already?
Yes, sir. So this is what we're talking about right here.
I can't see anything.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
You
how
need
do
to
I
transfer it, Mark?
Okay. This whole area is what we're speaking of. There are graves all here, existing. There's a overall picture of the cemetery. I thought it was on Mr. Briner, so what he was showing is easier, but this is the area, but this is all existing, developed, mostly sold, people already buried, thousands. I couldn't give you the exact number. The lawn crypts that we're talking about are about right here. Actually closer to here, sorry. And then right over here we have graves as well. So basically all of this, these are pre-installed lawn crypts, so they're called double-depth lawn crypts. What happens is we install concrete, basically lawn crypts, that one person goes down first and then the second person.
The culverts, like, they look like a culvert, maybe?
They look like a rectangle concrete box, and then
Yeah.
there's a concrete shelf
Okay.
in between. There's several hundred there. They were constructed, I want to say, in 2010, 2011. I'd have to look at the records. I'm just
Okay.
guessing on that. But all of this, there's thousands of graves there.
Well, is that in part of the new area?
Yeah, it's part of what's zoned agriculture. Let me go back.
But is it in the area where the new road is going, I think is what he's asking.
No, this is what we were developing right here. We put the fence, this is what we were developing. That was a sidewalk. Lots were going to go here, just regular graves. The road was gonna continue right here, and a cul-de-sac was gonna be basically right here. And then the road was gonna continue like that, and then to come back out. But this is when we were developing this is when we discovered that we weren't agricultural. So what's part of still agriculture, all of this, and even back, these are all graves. This is all existing graves. These are graves. These are graves. And then these are the lawn crypts we just spoke of. This is the last of the, meaning there's no graves from that cul-de-sac over. Although that fence line that's right there, I think that was I think it was the last woman that spoke, that 1801. There are graves here all the way up to the fence line.
To the fence line?
Right up to the maintenance area. But yes, there are graves right here. There's probably 6 foot off the fence, 8 foot, give or take.
How can we deal with this? I mean, it looks to me like
How long have
It's
those graves been
impossible.
there?
What?
He said maybe 2010.
2000.
Anywhere from,
He was guessing, but.
if a burial happens today, they've owned it 20, 30 years. I mean, this, I can go get you specific records, but we do burials in there, in this area, every day.
Every day, even though you knew that it was
No, we didn't know.
agriculture.
We didn't know, but people own the rights to be buried in these spaces. We didn't know this was agricultural until December, August, September-ish of 2017.
But are you
When we
still,
were devel-
are you
when we
still
were
selling
developing this.
graves there?
No.
Did you
All
stop
of
at
this
that time?
is already, this is already developed. We sell graves here.
Well, what I'm wondering is, what were the original, what do you call it, landscape of this area? And we know it's been built up, right?
Yeah.
Or do we know that, Jerry?
Excuse me, sir?
Well, just
Do
back.
we know the landscape here? Do we know, does the city have a landscape map? What do you call it?
Like topography?
Topography of this, say, 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah, we have intermittent grading topography that we could look at that would show us the changes. I mean, they may not be, they're accurate every other year or so, but sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what I'm wondering is, in some cases, especially on the north end, there's a huge slope there that she's shown us. And that slope looks to me like it may create a significant problem. Now, again, I think we need an engineering analysis of it because, and of course, the drainage, that whole area there, from the top of from the very northern spot down to the corner, into the, towards the east and south again. That whole area looks like it's caused major, major issues.
Yeah.
And I think the city needs an engineering analysis or the Bluebonnet, I don't know who, but someone needs to analyze this and figure out what needs to be done. And if something has to be moved, something has to be changed, it needs to be done before we agree to this.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
so,
go ahead.
let me just say though, but the city shouldn't do the analysis. The Bluebonnet has the obligation to do the
They have
analysis.
the-
City checks it.
Yeah,
And
we check it.
And the city engineer sent an email, I want to say it was last week or early this week, would have been last week, I think, to their engineer stating that the drainage design has to continue north of the cul-de-sac and continue to the north of the property. I do think there may be a bit of a challenge, but it's not insurmountable, that when you get to that farther northern part where the maintenance building is, some of that sheds the other way. But again, that's all pretty straightforward, and that can be looked at and designed as part of the engineering.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's always solutions. I think there can be a solution. It's gonna take some engineering work. The biggest challenge to me is how to handle the trees. And, I mean, if you're trying to save trees, you can't save trees and get the drainage and wall handled. I mean, there's gonna be trade-offs somewhere.
I understand, but my belief is that because our code calls for a wall, and many of the residents want a wall for separation. So I think we need to do what we can to figure out how to get a wall in. I don't see any reason why we can't move the drainage inside the wall. In other words, have the wall into their property far enough that we can build a wall and then have drainage inside of that on their property
Yeah.
and save the trees. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I mean. So let me ask you this. So see where A is on Exhibit A, that area where there's gonna be a road, you plan a road there. Between the road and the eastern edge of the property, there's nothing in there right now.
There's nothing
there's
in any
nothing
of this
in there,
area, sir.
George, I mean, there's,
okay.
Yeah.
that's where the work.
So I think that's the area
Right.
what
But even-
needs to be done.
Yeah.
But I refuse to think that there's no way to put a wall in there.
No, well, even in the areas where there's a question about existing graves and the limited space, you could put a wall in and that wall serve as part of the drainage retaining wall as well. So
Yeah.
it can be functional as well
Oh,
as
sure.
aesthetic and screening. So there's a lot of different standards, but the bulk of the property that they're mentioning is not currently encumbered. And so
Right.
there's flexibility there, assuming all the parties are willing to accomplish that.
For me, my suggestion is that we table this till we can get more information. You know, we didn't even know about the letter.
What
Right.
letter?
The letter from our engineer to their engineer.
But that was an
Telling you.
email, but those are, those correspondence are traditional review criteria. I'm just mentioning it to you because it is an important element of this
It's
discussion.
critical, yeah.
Well, there's numerous things that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about that drainage. That
Oh, yeah.
drainage, if that were my front yard, and you all didn't see it out there in the audience, they showed a little picture. But, I mean, that is just, it's not acceptable to either one of these ladies sitting right over there. If I had that, I would not be happy. I want to table this. There is way too much stuff out there going on, and I don't think we need to push this through at all. So I am there to make sure that their drainage issues are addressed for sure, 100%. There's the wall, it's in there. We need to discuss that, but that drainage issue is huge, and we've got to address that.
Okay, then I propose someone make a motion to table, but let me understand what this means. So we're going to table tonight. This was the first reading. We did have the first public hearing. If we table it to the next meeting, which is what I recommend, then we will decide at that meeting, do we take it off the table or not? If we take it off the table, it will be the second reading and second public hearing, at which time we can table again if we're not ready to go. So I just want everybody to understand that.
My suggestion is that this not be considered the first reading.
I agree with that.
Is that possible?
Yes, but there's too much out there. I mean, we've got issues on all those streets back there, privacy issues, we've got drainage issues. I'm
Well,
just not ready
let me
to do
ask a
anything.
question. I mean, we just did it. Why not, what's the downside of considering it first reading? We're in control of
I
that.
think.
So on the
I
second
understand.
reading, let's just clarify though, on the
Yeah.
second reading, if we don't like what we hear,
We
we
table
can
it.
table it again.
Absolutely,
It'll be another reading.
yeah,
So it's almost like having the second reading on a second reading.
yeah.
If
I
we don't
mean,
like what we.
I don't want to,
Well, I don't want to come in and have to vote next time.
Well,
I
that's
don't.
what I'm
Well,
saying.
then-
Right,
If you don't
then we'll
like it.
table
then
it again.
you
Right.
don't have to.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I just don't want to,
Yeah.
I mean, we
It's the
just had the first reading, so I hate to edict where we didn't, but because we did.
Right.
Well, I don't know if I
It's
agree
pretty
with
much
that.
the same
Well,
thing.
I
Well,
think,
but I mean, there's
Okay.
no downside. It's up to all of us what
I
we
think it's
do.
way out of,
Yeah,
we're a long way.
I
from a
agree.
solution.
I
I
agree.
agree we're a long way from the solution.
But we can
So-
keep it on the table.
Yeah,
We can keep it on the table as long as we need.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. Do we need to read the ordinance or the
Yeah, what is the ordinance? What is it? Resolution
So-
what?
resolution on it?
Number?
All right.
Oh, dash.
It's ordinance O-20-2111.
Okay.
And 2112.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
gonna do
no,
for both.
no, there's two. We're going to have two,
We have
we're
to
going to have to
separately.
take two actions.
Okay.
First one is,
Fair.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table ordinance O-20-2111.
one.
I'll
I second.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion to table by Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood of ordinance 0-20-211 and a second by Councilmember Nakamura. Okay, everybody understand the motion? This is for the first agenda 5A, which is the zoning agenda ordinance. Okay.
And Mayor,
we're gonna
need to take a manual vote. City Secretary had
Yeah, City Secretary had
down the election
Had to go take care of voting,
Yay.
or secure the voting
that-
machines, I think.
Other
it
voting.
was. Okay, so we're gonna do this, let me write this down, motion second. I want to take the vote manually. Councilmember Nakamura, how you vote?
I is tabling it, correct?
Table,
Aye.
correct. Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood,
Aye.
Councilmember Wheat,
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. Councilmember Dodson,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Rigney.
Aye.
And
Okay, the ordinance 0-20-2111 is tabled.
And I want to let everybody know that if we don't like and you don't like what's coming up to us, we will table it again. We will not force this through if we don't like it. So just know that that's what we're doing, and we're just trying to make this process stay in order to where we can continue to look at it as we go along, okay?
Right, I think
Okay.
we can work together, and it might take longer than
Yeah.
expected, but I think that's.
Same with you guys.
Need a motion to
I'll make a
table,
motion.
I'll make a motion to table ordinance O-20-2112.
I'll second.
you have a motion to table ordinance O-20-2112 by Councilmember Wheeler, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood. Okay, I'm gonna have to vote this manually also. I'm gonna start with Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood.
Aye.
Councilmember Wheat.
Aye.
Mayor Pro's aye. Councilmember Dodson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Rigney.
Aye.
Councilmember Nakamura.
Aye.
Okay, so that one is tabled also. So the only thing that everyone needs to know is, it will be on the agenda next meeting as a tabled item. First thing we will do is decide, do we take it off the table or not? If we do take it off the table, we'll go through the same process and make a determination at that point, do we want to table again or do something else? So just so everybody understands how that's going to work.
Mayor, are we going to give do they know the direction that we need to go in order to get this work through?
I'll reach out to them.
Okay.
And coordinate. I have a meeting with some of the residents next weekend, and I'll also reach out to you by the end of the week and set up a time to meet. And then we'll probably have a meeting where we'll invite all of the residents from the subdivision as well to try to address the different questions and different options.
Okay, but I agree. So it's going to take meetings several meetings, but we need some of the detailed information. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here talking about the same stuff over and over again. So what you've heard tonight, you've heard all of this. The council is not yet willing to give up the wall. Council's not yet willing to give up the, trees. We've heard from several drainage issues. I don't know enough to address that. That's an engineering question I think all these things can be addressed. The one question I asked right up front about that elevation, and Pastor Tejada talked about it, and that's not clear to me yet, so that's got to be clarified. But it does appear that property is going to be raised, which does create a a viewing issue. That's a tough one.
Mayor, one thing you can do is, I don't know if you guys have prepared a formal site plan that's, that includes your existing grades and proposed grades. That's a nice way to depict that on the entire property if you've already got the topography done. I don't know if you do or don't, we can talk about that. And the other thing is if you have any data relating to the trees off-site, because some of the trees you identified, of course, are the ones on the property line or yours, but there are additional trees off-site as well that you may have captured in your data collection that would be good to show on that. So we can talk about that certainly, but those are probably two essential tools. The last thing is if you have a sightline, any sightline analysis that you had done as far as the existing conditions, bless you, and the existing fences and existing homes and how that would work as well. So those are things off the top of our head, but we'll coordinate with you and get you kind of a list of things we'd
So did you understand when he said sightline?
I
Did you
do.
understand what he meant?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
The other thing is, what we're used to seeing, down that fence row where the trees are that we've been talking about, what we're used to seeing is kind of a on-paper analysis. Where are the trees? Where's the line? And kind of an assessment, a tree assessment of which ones are going to go and which ones aren't going to go, depending on what you're
You
proposing.
probably should
to
have a
do.
tree survey anyway.
Yeah, tree
already,
survey,
so-
right. It'll be a tree survey.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, and I give you my card before you go.
I have another question, Mayor.
Yeah.
What about the, do we know that the drainage from the property does not need a retention pond? Do we know that?
I don't think any engineering has
Right.
been proven yet.
My concern
We
is,
need to know.
well, my concern is if they clean it out, it's just going to do that right back again if they don't have a way of keeping the silt out of there.
I mean, isn't there a requirement that they have to keep their own?
Well,
Water?
the detention characteristics would be related to the runoff, and so that would be the engineering question. On the issue of the siltation, one of the comments our engineer made in that email I spoke of earlier is that he was suggesting some type of catch basin before it discharged into their pond, which would allow for a settling basin for silt. And so these are things that certainly are being talked about and looked at.
Okay.
But the question of whether or not there'd be stormwater detention required on their site is really going to be determined of the runoff characteristics of the post-development conditions.
Okay.
And I would guess that the only things that are considered would be impervious structures and/or the road. And so that's the mechanism that drives that. There's not rooftops and parking lots that are
I understand.
a substantial part of the property. And so
understand.
certainly they would look at that and determine if that runoff was sufficient to require
Because
detention.
it seems to me like that's a major issue, very
Yeah,
major.
but it's not uncommon in stormwater management to store within the pipes or the ditches or the culverts or whatever. And so I don't know what the characteristics and calculations have been considered, and so we'd have to take a look at that.
Of course. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So clearly, there's a lot to do, there's a lot of homework to do. Whether or not you can get that done by 2 weeks, I don't know. You'll have to answer that. But I'll say it one more time. The council is not going to take action until they're clear on what will happen. The only mechanism we have are these two approvals. Once we approve, we can't do anything about it. So that's why we're going to be very careful. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Thank everyone for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I don't know about you guys, but I need to recess for a brief
Let's
brief
recess.
period of time. We're in recess.